Hello, all, and welcome back to another episode of Movies and Us, a weekly gathering place filled with conversations about movies, stories, and connection. My name is Jennifer Hahn.
And I'm Sarah Callan.
And today we're going to be reviewing the latest film, Twisters. Okay, Sarah, kick us off with an IMDb summary for Twisters.
A retired tornado chaser and meteorologist is persuaded to return to Oklahoma to work with a new team and new technologies.
Okay, all right. Let's start off with our one-sentence summaries for Twisters. Sarah, what is yours?
Mine is, there's no room for a third wheel while chasing tornadoes.
Nice. So good. So good. My one-sentence summary is, stay away from the stalker tornado wranglers, kids.
Honestly, though, there's a lot of red flags popping up in this movie.
Oh my gosh. Yes. And we will dive into all of them.
Yes.
When we get into our conversation. Okay. Well, let's start off by sharing our thoughts at a high level of what we thought about Twisters, and then we will include a spoiler and then have full free reign to talk about all of the plot points of the second half of the movie. But Sarah, I'm curious your thoughts about Twisters. We reviewed Twister from the 90s earlier a couple weeks ago, and I know that was one that you got to watch as a kid. So did Twisters do your childhood movie of choice justice?
Yeah, I think it did. I think Twisters is a fun blockbuster. It's honestly, I think it's like the perfect summer blockbuster because you got some big name stars, you got some action. It's happy and lightweight, even though people are murdered by tornadoes in this, but they're not our named protagonists that we care about, so it's fine. But yeah, I had a fun time watching it. I appreciate that this very much is in the spirit of Twister, while also strategically changing some things to make this work a little bit better today. And it was interesting while watching, because there are certain things that I feel like Twisters does that we had talked about in our Twister review being kind of disappointed by. And so I like that there were some changes that I think enhanced it a bit without trying to, do something completely novel. It's a safe, comfortable, enjoyable movie. I don't think it's the best movie of the year, but I had a good time watching it.
All right. Wow. I'm pleasantly surprised. I think this will be a fun conversation. I did not really enjoy Twisters. I was a little bit bored, not gonna lie, throughout a lot of it. And there's just some things with how they filmed some of the scenes that I think could have been better, and they could have leaned into some aspects that I think Twister does really, really well with showcasing the fear and the awe and all of that about the tornadoes that we get to see from our main character. So I was wanting a little bit more of that in this movie. And then my biggest problem is that our main female protagonist that we're really following for most of the movie, I felt like I didn't really know her and she wasn't compelling to me. So it's hard for me to follow this very meaningful journey that she goes on and all of the character development. I found that Jo from Twister was a lot more compelling of a protagonist. So I was kind of stuck on that piece. I'm just she's just very vanilla. And then a lot of the interactions with the other characters also felt really vanilla. So maybe what a word that you use to describe this movie being safe is probably quite accurate. And I was wanting a little bit more from Twisters. I think that Glenn Powell really steals the screen in a lot of these scenes. And then I just wanted more for Anthony Ramos's character. I feel like he has such a compelling screen presence, and I feel like this script doesn't give him enough to do. And we've seen him just be absolutely electric. So I'm man, I feel like this actor could have done so much more. So yeah, I think my biggest problems is I found the characters to be really vanilla and hard to follow. So therefore, the whole rest of the movie rests on a lot of them. And then my other biggest problem was like, I think a lot of the tornado sequences could have been filmed with a lot more tension and build up. And we just like immediately get to see the tornadoes up close. And I feel like that didn't work as well for me.
Mm-hmm. So we needed a little bit more like Jaws tornado, but we don't
Yeah.
want a sharknado. We want Jaws version of filming a tornado.
Yes, exactly. I'm like, don't show me it yet. Let me like hear it and hear the rain and
Mhm.
hear it grumbling. And I'm happy. I'm like, experiencing the thrill of all that. And then at some point, obviously, show us some stuff. But this is something that the first movie I think does a much better job with. I think we talked about it in our review of Twister, but just how much is filmed in some sequences like a horror movie. Like you hear them talk about the tornado as if it's like a monster or something that's coming after them, and it's this like larger than life supernatural thing that's hunting them. And that was really fun. That was a lot of fun. And so even with the better technology and visuals that we have now, ironically, I think the original Twister does a much better job of making that feel really thrilling and exciting.
Yeah, and I think that is because of like the central premise of this movie is twisters are appearing more frequently and kind of out of the blue, and so they're not able to like track them as well, or they're not able to give as much warning as normal. And so I think because technology has advanced and so they needed like a new reason to be going after the twisters, that Jaws like version of filming the twisters maybe doesn't work as well in this context because the tornadoes are just kind of popping up. But I think you're right, there probably is a way that they could have exploited that a little bit more, because it very quickly goes from like we're just chilling, things are happy, and then like all of a sudden we're scrambling and running from a tornado. They maybe could have done a little bit more of those like buildups to make them a little bit more harrowing. I don't know. I was like, all right, cool. Tornado just descended. This is scary. Okay, cool. Let's keep going. Especially I think like some of the scenes, I was like, oh, I'm really glad that I'm not there right now. Like that would suck. I'm glad that I'm not in Oklahoma. Like so I it was effective enough for me, but I definitely see how they could have exploited that to be even more thrilling and exciting and tense than it is. But yeah, they went more the safe route instead.
Yeah. I just kept thinking about that opening scene in Twister, and
Mm-hmm.
how well it's shot, and the even the set piece of using, I think it's the dog or the cat, I don't know, one of the pets, and they're just like they need to save all of the humans and this pet, and the way that it's shot is just it's so well done. And honestly, it's like such a strong opening. And so I'm like, okay, this is the picture of what a really great tornado thrill sequence can be. Give us more of that. You know what I mean? Like study the pattern and the format of how that worked so well. And then you don't need to replicate it through every tornado sequence in this movie, but there needs to be like one big set piece like that that really gets your heart pumping. And a lot of it's like not even the like premise or the like associated like goal of our protagonist. It's purely down to like filmmaking and how it's shot and how it's edited, and some of the devices that they can use to heighten the sense of stakes. Not even like the scale of stakes of like more people dying, even just like we care about this pet, I want this pet to be safe. And so even when the humans are safe, oh my gosh, there's this added layer of the pet's not there yet. That that whole bit was so well done, and it's really like how it's filmed, how it's cut, how it's shot, that I think makes such a big difference. So I was thinking about that scene a lot throughout this movie and just how well this could be. And so I feel like that creates more of a delta for me of what I actually got in Twisters.
No, that's a great point. And that opening scene in Twister is just top notch. I mean, it's one of the best parts of the movie. It might be the best part of the movie. And even this really harrowing opening in Twisters where, her friends all are
Yeah.
sucked into the tornado in the first like 5 minutes of the movie. Like it it somehow didn't create that same visceral response as that moment in the opening in Twister. And you're right, there just aren't enough dogs in Twisters. We hear mention of a dog. We don't get to see a dog ever. And that's sad.
Honestly, throw a dog in there and we will
Right?
immediately, like, you could talk about the most efficient emotional investment in any character.
Mhm.
Like,
It's
we're
true.
there. You know, hello,
Yeah.
John Wick, the entire series is based on
Hello.
vengeance for his dog. So if a whole series franchise can rest on this one animal, we're gonna be there for rooting for the dog against the big bad tornado.
It's true. It's true, honestly. Like in Twister, we see multiple dogs that have to be
Mhm.
rescued. And
Yes.
each time it's like, "Oh my gosh, please save
The
the dog."
dog.
Obviously, we care about the humans and we want them to be safe as well, but man, there's just something about a dog. You just put it in
Mhm.
that scene and we just want the dog to be safe.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes,
Okay.
exactly. Exactly. While we're talking about the openings of
Yeah.
Twister and Twisters, here's another comparison point that I was making between the two movies that I was like, I think Twister really did it better. When we meet this crew at the beginning of the movie, we're essentially meeting, like, if we had to distill it down, like, female primary protagonist, a love interest of hers, and then her group of friends, right? So we get to experience that with Joe at the beginning, um, with the whole like divorce papers showing up, all that stuff. And then we get to see that in Twisters with Kate and her whole crew in that flashback. I think that the dialogue and the banter in Twister was so much better than the dynamic and the dialogue that we get with this crew in Twisters. I found the characters to be a lot more punchy and dynamic and exciting, and how they like talked to each other in the crew in Twister. And in Twisters, I just felt like it was like very boring. Like their dialogue feels very safe, very vanilla, and we don't really like know who any of these people really are. And so like they're talking about like the mission and their goals, but it felt a little bit more lifeless. And I think in general, a lot of the dialogue in this movie felt much more lifeless to me. And so I think that was a comparison point where I was like, these people don't really, they're not really talking like humans. And then also like some of their commentary is like, what's going on? Like one of the girls, one of the ones that dies, which I feel bad about, but the one with the glasses, like she jokes at one point like, ooh, what if it's not a tornado? I'm just like, what? Like I found the banter to be so much more exciting and dynamic and punchy in Twister, in that opening scene. And I feel like that was one thing that was also hard to like get invested in this crew, the opening sequence of Twisters. That could just be a me thing, but that was a comparison point. Like immediately right off the bat, I was already thinking about like, oh, I think actually the other one did it better.
Oh, yeah. Well, and when you have in Twister actors like Philip Seymour Hoffman and
Mm-hmm.
Alan Ruck, you have these really great
Yeah, that's
actors
right.
who are these like side characters. The whole time I was like, man, I miss Philip Seymour Hoffman. Like, oh my gosh, he was so good in Twister and he stole every scene that he was in. And we needed that in Twisters. I was also just so annoyed by what they were doing with Anthony Ramos's character in that
Oh
opening.
my gosh.
It's like, why are you doing this to him? He's so much better than this. Can't we write a better part for Anthony Ramos? He deserves better. Uh
He really does deserve better. I was shook because he's so dynamic as on screen and brings so much life to any role that he does. So I'm like, this is not an Anthony Ramos problem. This is like the character was written so poorly and flat and boring. Like he's just, gosh, give us some fun, spicy banter or something.
yeah, cuz you know that he can bring it too.
Yeah.
So I also was a little bit confused in the beginning of like the dynamics of the relationships there because it almost seemed like it was like Anthony Ramos's character and then everybody else. And they were almost like two teams kind of competing, but like not in a fun, like bantery way, but almost like Javi and Kate were at odds with each other. It was just a weird group
Mm.
dynamic that I didn't like quite understand. And
Hmm.
I don't know. I feel like there's a better way to have introduced us to those characters and their dynamic, especially because they end up working together in present day. So like that would have been, if we were going for some like butting of heads between them and all of that, then that could have made for a really fun contrast when we bring them back together. But nothing was super clear or well defined, because the point of that opening was to see Kate's tragedy as everybody dies in a tornado because she was reckless or whatever. So I get that the point wasn't to establish the relationship between these two characters, but that's really what it should have done to really
Hmm.
pay off the other, I don't know, hour plus of the movie.
Yeah, and then we get some more dynamics between Javi and Kate, which we should talk about.
Mhm. Yeah, we need
Uh,
to talk about those.
we can include a spoiler alert here. This is perfect timing. If you haven't seen Twisters, it is out in theaters. We recommend checking it out before continuing to listen to the rest of this episode. Okay. Did you see that coming? I thought that like the whole dynamic between her and Tyler was already like plenty for us to sink our teeth into. I did not think they would also have yet another dude have a little love triangle situation in this movie. So that whole like I would have done. There was a point in my life where I would have done anything for you, Kate. Bit I was like, oh my gosh, we really I didn't know this was going to be a Nicholas Sparks movie. Like I was not warned.
A Nicholas Sparks movie with twisters.
It
Excellent.
really is
With the
a
tornado
Nicholas Sparks movie though.
wrangler.
It's perfect. Like Glenn Powell
Honestly.
Tyler is a Nicholas Sparks male protagonist to a T, you know?
Oh, it's so good. Yeah. Again, Anthony Ramos deserved better, and I'm just upset that they couldn't find something better for him to do. You know, like we had enough going on of him working for the shady organization and then choosing to part ways with the shady organization to save the people in the theater. Like that was enough. We didn't need this like I'm in love with you BS. Just unnecessary. Didn't help. Was not set up properly. Like it just added nothing.
Oh my
Okay.
gosh. Yeah. Uh I think you said it perfectly, which is it wasn't set up properly. Had there been these like insinuations throughout, like in the flashbacks and then in the present, that like we would have gotten there better, maybe. I would have bought it a little bit more. Um but I think it serves to add this like weird additional like stakes to the emotional dynamics that felt like a little bit of a cheap device, like already we're theoretically invested in seeing Tyler and Kate end up together. So like oftentimes, in a romantic movie, you add this like love triangle bit because then it like adds tension to the core relationship that we actually want to see, but then there's this third person that's like competing and vying for attention, and so it does typically theoretically is supposed to like create more stakes, and then you're like rooting even more for the Kate and Tylers to end up together. But I feel like in this case it's just kind of like thrown in there, and I think maybe we were supposed to feel like it adds more stakes of like who will she choose, or like here's a stumbling block potentially for the real two leads for them to end up together. But I feel like it's come so out of left field, and I'm like, this just feels like a formula that we're like checking the box on now, versus I really like buy that Anthony Ramos was in love with her this whole time. Especially it's funny because he insinuates like there's a point where I would have done anything for you, and I think we were supposed to think back to that flashback of like, oh, like even then he was in love with her, but like to your point, like we don't get any of that at all. They just seem to be like at odds with each other. So like the thing that it points us back to, I feel like there's nothing there for us to like mull on, to be like, oh, that look that he gave her then, like that was what this meant. And I feel like we there isn't enough there. So it felt pretty thin and like box checking for me on the formula of a romantic movie with a love triangle.
Well, and it's weird though, because Javi is also in like the best friend role too. So it's this weird like he is giving Tyler his approval and saying like go get her, like that whole thing, and then like hey, shoot your shot. But he had also just said that like or insinuated that he was in love with her, which I'm like, okay, buddy, can we talk about this? Because it's been 5 years since you saw this chick. Why? What are we doing? You don't know who she is. She might be completely different now because it's been 5 years after a very traumatic experience that you both went through. Can we not do this? Can we just take a moment, be friends, be colleagues, go save a town together, and then maybe afterwards reassess? Like, okay, could this work? No, she's after Tornado Wrangler. Okay, I'm gonna be a good friend and I'm going to step aside. I don't understand it. Doesn't make sense.
Oh, well, this is why Javi is the real MVP, because Homeboy like makes that turn and that shift to like best friend
He
mode,
does.
to be like, go get her so quickly. I'm like, what? That is big of you. I have some questions on how quickly and efficiently you processed that rejection. And immediately you're jumping into support role. But you know what? Maybe this is a testament of your capacity to love that is beyond human capacity. You are a superhuman.
Ah, okay. So his superpower is love. I
Yes.
see.
The purity of his love for Kate, that no matter what, he just wants to see her happy, you know? And if that's a Tornado Wrangler and not him, he's already there. He's chilling in the car, being like, go get her. That's
And
impressive.
he's got his snacks, so he's
Yeah, he
fine.
does have his snacks. Oh, wow. Yeah. That whole bit did not make any sense to me. So, Anthony Ramos, justice for him.
Yes. Justice for Anthony Ramos. He deserves better.
Mm-hmm. Yes, indeed. Yes, indeed. Okay. There's another big, the real big pairing in romantic love in this movie is our dude Tyler, the Tornado Wrangler with Kate, aka, gosh, he really is a Nicholas Sparks lead. At one point when they're at the rodeo, he goes, "You don't face your fears, you ride them." Now that is some romantic movie BS that you see everywhere, that we all eat up. But I just didn't expect this in this movie. You know, like I thought that there would obviously, like the minute Kate and Tyler like see each other, you're like, oh, okay, they're gonna end up together. But the movie actually spends quite a lot of time focused on their love story. And I was thinking about how in Twister, the original movie, there is such a strong emphasis on the relationship between Joe and, I forget his name, but the dude that Bill Paxton plays, and like the relational dynamics there. But somehow like that was so much more interesting to me than them two falling in love. And maybe it's because there's so much like history between Joe and, I really should learn Bill Paxton's character's name. What is his name?
I think it is Bill.
Oh, okay, look at that. Bill Harding. There we go. The fact that there is so much history there, we kind of just like immediately buy into it, and there's like clear chemistry. This one, I don't know. I didn't buy into it as much, and I maybe it goes back to like, I think we're supposed to like root for and be more on board with Kate as a character, but like I just think that she's not as dynamic and interesting as someone like Joe. So it's hard for me to like be on board with like her and all these like people falling in love with her immediately. Like she obviously does the whole like banter bit of like they're sparring at the beginning, and so like, okay, we check that romantic comedy box. but I felt the whole time like I think I was supposed to be more invested in this than I actually am. So I'm curious your thoughts about that. And then there's obviously like a whole bunch of things that Tyler does that's really creepy that we should talk about. But in general, that whole aspect of this movie, did it work for you? Did it not?
Yeah, this is one of those things where I'm watching a movie and I'm like, okay, I understand that this has to be in here, but that doesn't mean that I need to enjoy this part of this movie. Uh, and that's how I felt about the Glenn Powell of it all. He's charismatic, he's fun, that's great, whatever. I don't understand why this needed to be a rom com. Why did this need to be a Nicholas Sparks movie? Why couldn't this just be about this chick who wants to chase some tornadoes? I don't understand why we need all of this other baloney in here. But it's fine. Whatever. He can be a creepy rom-com lead, and he's charismatic and it's fun and the witty banter of it all and blah blah blah, and I'm like, okay, great, can we get back to the chasing of tornadoes? Like,
Mm-hmm.
that's what I came for. I came here for the twisters. I did not come here for the Glenn Powell of it all, which I know makes me in the minority.
Yes,
And
you
I
are.
realize that, which is why I'm fine. We will just get through this and then we'll get back to the fun tornado stuff.
Mm-hmm. This is the same reason why Hitman did not work for you. The Glenn Palette of all
Yeah.
is not doing its thing for you. It's working for me.
Yeah.
I love it. I eat it up. But for
Mhm.
you, you're like, can we just chase some tornadoes in peace, please, without the chaos of the tornado
Mhm.
wrangler?
And I get it. He's doing a good job. I understand the appeal. It just,
It's not for
it's
you.
fine. It
It's not
just
for
doesn't
you.
work for me that well. And that's fine. So I understand it. I get it. I love it. For everybody else, I am the problem and I am okay with that.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Well, honestly, when he shows up on screen, my first thought is like, can we just have twisters, but we are following it with all of the Tornado Wrangler crew because they just are so much more
Mm.
interesting.
Oh, they're
And I
so
feel like,
fun.
yeah, that
Yeah.
whole crew. What there's like they're all such interesting characters, and like that's the crew that we spent the most time with and were invested in from the beginning in Twister. And that's the crew that I think we should have been following from the beginning in Twisters. Because honestly, for half of the movie, we're with Kate and the really boring corporate dudes. You know what I mean? And it's so lifeless and dry, and like also we're like, wait, why are we do we are we supposed to be rooting for them? And I know there's that whole bit where like she realizes that, and then like Javi realizes that, and then like change sides essentially. But she as a character so like flat for that whole section, that the whole time the tornado wrangler crew's like on screen, they're so like full of life and like hilarious and like big in personality that I'm like, can we just, I want to go hang out with them. Can we go hang out with them? Because they look far more interesting and exciting. And it honestly, when like they show up on screen, I almost like breathe a sigh of relief because I was like, oh my God, finally something interesting for me to sink my teeth into, because I was so bored leading up to that point. So I think that was like an interesting tension too. Of like, I kind of want to follow the people that I think we're supposed to hate, but like they are far more dynamic. So I kind of wish that we were hanging out with that crew and watching them do their live streams and just like be big and silly and ridiculous. Like that looks so much more fun.
Yeah, they're just a blast to watch. Though I was stressed every time I was with them, but it was a lot more fun. I do appreciate though that this film is, they kind of like mix up the crews from the original Twister, and I kind of liked that. I think it could have maybe been handled a little bit better, but in the original one, it's the ragtag group of quirky scientists and then the corporate dudes who are dressed in all black and have all black vehicles, so they're clearly the villains. Like, it's good and bad, and that's it. There's no room in between. And so I do appreciate that this one tried to add in some complexity, because things are complex and you don't always immediately know who the villains are. And so I liked that the film was trying to do that. I don't know that it did it super effectively, but I liked where they were going with it.
Yeah, that's true. That the intention was there, and I think there's that like really great scene with Javi where Kate's like, "Why are you doing this?" And he explains like, "I want to help people too. There's a very real need around the resourcing and the funding for it in order to continue to advance the technology." And that like that kind of push and pull, being torn between like your vision and your dream, but then the very real reality of funding it. Like, hello, this is like getting a movie made. The impossibility of like your creative vision and then needing the funds and the investors to really bring that vision to life is a very real aspect of making things happen, making your dreams come true. And I love that there's that little scene where Javi communicates that tension that exists and some of the very real trade-offs that he has made and he is aware of and he is okay with because he sees a larger picture. And then, you know, that question of like how much and when and who and how you compromise to make those trade-offs to make things happen. But like it makes sense for it to come from Javi too, because he is Anthony Ramos and he can sell me anything. So
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah, totally. Like, could we have gotten more Anthony Ramos time and maybe less
yes,
some other stuff? So then those moments are a little bit more weighty, you know, like you know kind of from the jump that that moment is going to come where he realizes that he's working with the bad guys, but he's not a bad guy. But I wish that the movie would have given us maybe a little bit more time with him to see him wrestling with these things, maybe more than we actually get.
can we just get a movie with him being the protagonist? Like it's not great
Bingo!
when
Yeah.
in this movie with arguably like two male leads and one female lead, that the two male leads are written to be far more interesting in their backstories and their characters, in their development than our primary female lead. Like theoretically, like I'm like, no, I want Kate to be so much more interesting to follow and her growth and her journey and all that kind of stuff. But these two male leads are far more interesting in how they are written in this movie, in this version of the movie. And I feel like that's kind of a problem. She should be the most interesting character in this whole dang movie. And really she's not. She's getting like outshone by the way that these other two leads are written that are male. And I think that is like one of the core issues that I had also with this movie is the fact that I don't understand who Kate is and what she's after. And I think the script doesn't give her, I think, enough complexity and like that dynamic dimensions to her. So she's just pretty flat. And so therefore I'm like grasping for anything interesting. And you're right. Like the Tyler character, the Tornado Wrangler crew, Anthony Ramos' whole like moral dilemma, like that's so interesting. So I think there's some interesting things that need to be like rewritten for this to like work better and for like our female lead to be truly the star.
The other character that I just wanted to spend more time with is Kate's mom, played by Maura Tierney, who is just phenomenal. I just wanted to stay at that ranch and like, can we just hang out with you while you're like running this whole farm by yourself? Because that's a lot of work. And so clearly she is incredible and a boss. And I'm like, okay, can we just hang out with mom for a while? Because she was great.
Once again, all of the people that were not the main leads of this movie, we are like, ooh, what about that one? Let's spend some time with them. This is a problem. Yeah.
Good stuff.
Good stuff. Okay. Other issues that I had with this movie. Can we make a list of all of the ways that Tyler is an absolute walking red flag?
Oh, yes, please. Yes.
I've got 4 big things on my list that I jotted down. Real like red alert, run the other direction moments. And I'm intrigued what is on your list. First one, homeboy somehow figures out which motel she's staying at.
Hello.
Which room that she's in, and shows up with pizza. Like the pizza's great. Thank you for showing up with pizza. Really appreciate that. But how did you find her here? You just met her for the first time that day. And here we are with the pizza. The pizza's great. Again, the pizza's not the problem. The showing up and
Yeah.
finding our exact room, that's
Yeah.
weird. That's really creepy.
Well, and I was just wondering, like, is it they're all kind of staying at the same crappy motels? Like, is that it? And so then maybe, but then like, how did he find her specific room number?
He
Is
must have asked. He had to have like asked around or like asked
yeah,
the front
that's
desk. Like if you
it's
play
not
out
great,
the
man.
like if you play out the like 10-minute sequence that happens before the shot of him showing up with the pizza.
Yeah,
You're like,
yeah,
he's just roaming around, like asking around. That's really weird. Hey, do you know of a Kate? What room is she in?
yeah. Either that or he saw her go into her
Oh,
room, which means that he was watching her,
that's even worse. Yeah.
right? Like, it's not great.
No,
Not
it's not
great.
great. It's not great. Okay. So that one, maybe we can explain away because they all stay at the motels together.
Yeah.
Second one, he presumably, okay, the ranch, the farm that her mom is running is like off the beaten path, like it's not
Yes.
off the side of the road.
Hours away.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And so she goes to visit mom because that's her mom. That makes sense. How did homeboy show up at the door of this barn
Right?
at her mom's house? I was fixated on that whole scene. I think like they have a like very great moment or whatever, but the whole time I'm like, how did you end up here? Also, how is she not phased? She's not like,
Right?
how did you find my mother's home? And how did the mom let you in here? There's so many questions, but he somehow found her location.
Yeah, I had a lot of questions for mom because I don't know if I'm mom in this situation. And again, I am not a mother. I don't have children. So I am just speaking out of turn. But here we go. If my child had gone down a career path, she has a very traumatic experience, leaves the state, leaves the field for 5 years, is processing through some very real, complex PTSD business.
Yeah.
And then she shows up at my house. Yeah. Right? She shows up at my house 5 years later in the middle of the night, doesn't want to talk about whatever's going on that has eaten her up. And then, like, the next day, some dude shows up in this big tornado chasing truck with a big cowboy hat on. And I'm just going to be like, yeah, dude, come on in. Let's hang out. Excuse? No. Nope. She is going through some stuff and you need to stay away, sir. This is not the time for your foolishness.
Once again, maybe Glenn Powell is also a superhero because he's clearly got some charm that is cast a spell. Oh man, yeah. It don't make no sense.
Yeah, I was very perplexed by all of that because I was like, okay, he got your location. The only thing that I could come up with is that he talked with Javi about it, and Javi was not a good friend and gave Tyler Kate's location. But then how would Javi know that Kate went to her mom's house? Mm-hmm. How would he have put that together? Unless because she drove Javi's truck, which how did she have access to Javi's truck? How was that at the rodeo? That I didn't understand, but whatever. Oh, yeah. Maybe there's like GPS tracking in the truck, so he was able to find where she is to tell Tyler to go get her. But then if that's what happened, why did Javi show up like 2 days later for his truck? Right. I don't understand. None of that made sense.
We don't know. Yeah. Well, she's like, sorry about your truck. And he's like, it's fine. I'm like, this is not even your truck. This is Storm Parr's truck. This is company assets.
Which, I mean, it's a shady corporation. So maybe at that point he was like, yeah, I don't care, man.
Your thing.
You can blow up his stuff for all I care. He was checked out.
Oh. Well, okay. So then there's this whole scene where they're having dinner with mom. And it's like the golden hour light, again, Nicholas Sparks movie. And like in a Nicholas Sparks movie, it's usually a really cute scene because you're like, oh, they're meeting parents and he's trying to meet parents. But the whole time I'm like, they're not dating. you don't really know him. He doesn't really know you. And so like I think I'm supposed to be like, oh, this is really sweet. But the cognitive dissonance in my brain is just going off in many directions. But that's not my number 3 scene. My number 3 scene of why Tyler is a creepy tornado wrangler that we should all run in the other direction is she is gone. I think, I don't know, she's like sleeping or something like that. She wakes up and finds him in the barn going through her stuff, going through her
Mhm.
notebooks. And
Yeah.
that's when he discovers her like whole theory and how great it is and blah blah blah. And he encourages her in it. So like, yay, encourage her dreams. But how you discovered her dream and her like vision and like her theory, you're basically going rummaging through her belongings, my dude. We can't be doing this.
Yeah, and especially because they were originally positioned almost as villains, or not villains, but like foes.
Oh yeah.
You know, like they were on opposite teams, and then now we're in this gray area where nobody's really on a team and they're just chilling and vibing in the barn and it's fun. But like, I don't know, that's sketchy. You just I without warning, without invitation, you show up at this random house and then you start rifling through someone's personal
Stop.
belongings. It's not great.
No,
Not great.
it's not good. Nope. Okay, and then my final number 4 moment is when at the end of the movie, supposedly they are now like almost together, right? And then she is taking a photo of the tornado. Ben is taking a photo of her because Ben's doing his whole reporting journalistic thing. And then Tyler goes, "Get me a copy of that," insinuating he would like this photo of Kate that Kate doesn't know is being taken of her, let alone her not knowing that Tyler's going to have this photo. So I'm like, what? This is weird. Like, why did you make that comment? Who wrote the script?
Mhm.
Why is he so weird? That was I was like, ew.
Yeah.
Photo that this girl doesn't know is getting taken of her. I think that's the biggest problem.
Right?
It's like if they
Yeah.
took a photo together and like in front of Kate, he said, "Oh, get me a photo of that." She's aware a photo was taken and she's aware that he's requested this photo. But like she has no idea that this photo even exists of her, which I'm like, if you like multiply that out, that's like really quite not good.
Well, and like the reporter decided to shift the focus of his piece from Tyler to Kate, but did she consent to that? Like, is he about to just like run this whole profile on her and she never said that that was okay? Like, what are our checks and balances in place
Mm.
for this to make sure that she is able to give her consent to be reported about, especially after such a traumatic thing that is going to be the grounding for why she is such an incredible story is because her boo and her friends died 5 years ago. Like, I don't know. Maybe let's handle that a little bit better.
Yeah, maybe she doesn't want that fame and that glory and to be exposed in that way and to be in the public
Yeah.
limelight, you know?
I mean, she very specifically did not give her last name when they
Yes.
asked. Like,
I remember that.
multiple
Yeah.
times they asked, and she's like, Kate is fine.
Yeah,
I'm
yeah,
like,
yeah.
she does not want to be the focus of a story. She does not want the limelight. What are you
Hmm.
doing? It's
Well,
not
and
great.
that's the thing is because it's like the choice wasn't hers to make. Like that's the problem. You know, like Tyler said to Ben, change the story. Like she's your story, and like then that is to be. You know, it's like this man can't be making choices for this woman. We've seen enough of that in history, in movies. You know, like she is a full human being that can choose to desire that, advocate for that, or say no. And like we can't just be making choices for her. We also can't be taking photos of her and requesting them without her awareness. General
Hmm.
rule of thumb.
That's a good rule of thumb.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yep. Okay, that's my big rant about why he's creepy. Any more to add? Do we hit most of the big ones?
I would also like to add um, the rom com staple of the airport scene.
Oh, yeah.
Um, I just, I don't know, man. Destroying public property so that you can then go
Oh, yeah, that's right.
chase your boo into the airport. Like, that's not cute. That's not romantic. I'm not here for that. You, no, go away, go home. Also, my other question about that scene is, how is his truck okay? Like, his truck,
Yeah.
and I get it. It's like reinforced, it's got all the business, it can withstand a tornado, which is really cool. But that thing was toppled over so many times. How is it drivable like a handful of days later? That does not make sense to me. And it looked fine. Like, it
Yeah.
didn't look like
It.
it had just been through hell. So
Mhm.
how is the truck okay? But then he uses it to um, do what he does. And I did not like that. That was not okay to me.
Well, in general, that whole like drill into the earth
Mhm.
foundation thing, like there's so many scenes throughout this movie where like they're in the middle of a tornado and then he's got this like lint in his eye and then he activates the little drill thing and it like goes maybe like 5 feet into the ground and I'm supposed to believe that this thing in the like soft dirt is the thing that's going to keep you from getting sucked into a tornado. Like I don't know if I buy this. Like perhaps if we've drilled into like hard concrete foundation like 20 feet deep, okay, maybe. Also, I'm not a scientist or a meteorologist, so I don't know. But we're seeing literal like foundations of homes getting like pulled up into the tornado, and I'm supposed to believe that your flimsy little drill going 5 feet into the soft dirt is supposed to keep you there. I'm telling you, Tyler is a superhero. He can do anything.
And what if his truck is not actually a truck, but it's a transformer? And
Oh
so
yeah.
that might explain some things.
Mm-hmm. I like it
Okay,
because this does
got
not
it.
make logical sense. So we must come up
No.
with a headcanon that we
Yes.
think will be fun and whimsical.
Yeah, man. So while we're talking about science-y things, and I am also not a scientist, and I know nothing about how anything science-y works. So I could be very, very wrong. But the whole premise of stopping the tornado rests upon her having these giant barrels of some sort of polymer just chilling in her barn. And as we have talked about, it's been 5 years since this
Yeah.
previous engagement with these barrels of polymer. And the first try, she tries a few and it doesn't work. And so then they determine that they need more. How does she have like 20 some odd barrels of this polymer chilling in her barn? And how is it still good after 5 years? She was a college student who was trying to get like a grant or something. Like, she did not have a bunch of money, and I would imagine those giant barrels of polymer were probably
Mm-hmm.
expensive. How did she have so many of them? And what is the shelf life on those? Because 5 years seems like a long time for that to just be chilling in your barn, and it's fine to use to kill a tornado. It didn't make sense to me. But I don't know
Mm-hmm.
science, so it might be fine, but like, did not make sense.
Yeah, and it's like hot, in the summer.
Right? You're in Oklahoma. It's
Yeah,
a barn.
I'm
Like,
pretty sure that there would be some deterioration or like,
right.
yeah, changes to the like base like composition of that. I don't know. Again, we are just two gals with just some ideas and some common sense that are maybe trying to apply to this. So we don't know what we're talking about. But yeah, it's a little funky. It's a little funky. Also, the whole thing was that like she didn't have that much money and needed the grant to make more of it, you know? So like how does she have that many vats of this like potentially, you
Right?
know, that costs money? Like let's
Yeah.
take some money from Javi's whole operation, redirect it over here. Something we need something. Even just a little montage sequence, cute little like her and Tyler making this composition together, like something.
Yeah, and we get the montage when they're putting the other chemical-y stuff into the pipes to make into rockets to fire into the clouds. I don't know what
Oh
I'm
yeah.
saying. So we get a montage, but then the barrels are just there. And so I'm like, why did we have to have a montage of the rockets and not include the barrels when I'm more concerned about where did you get these giant barrels? Like,
There's
I
like
could
15 of
probably,
them
like,
too.
there's
Yeah.
so many on that trailer. We were just, the movie focused on the wrong things, and we needed to know about the barrels. I didn't so much care about the rockets because you can make a rocket. That's easy, whatevs. How do you get a giant barrel on such short notice?
We definitely watched this movie the wrong way, is my conclusion.
Mm-hmm. And
We
I mean,
fixated.
I had fun with it, you know, like I was having a good time. I was like, yeah, man,
Yeah.
tornadoes, let's go. Like, I didn't have a bad time with it, but there's just a lot of things in this that did not make sense. So, one thing that I did like that this film I think did better than the original Twister um, is I feel like we actually got to see Kate in action and got to understand that she actually does have this like sixth sense when it comes to tornadoes. And as problematic as that like opening scene was, I do appreciate that we got to see her and her instincts, because I just kept thinking about in Twister that moment when Bill shows up and he's outside and then he like bends down and he touches the dirt, and all of a sudden we're supposed to be like, oh my god, he's a tornado whisperer, and like we have nothing to back that up, but the film is just supposed to like make us believe that with just him touching some dirt. So I appreciate that Twisters was like, hey, let's actually show you that she does have an instinct about these things and she is good at this. And so then when people are questioning her or Javi is like, no, yo, she is the best, we've seen her skills in action. Obviously, it ended in tragedy, so that's not great. But we've seen that instinct that she has. And so we can believe that when she goes into the field, we can see that instinct again. So I think that that was set up much better in Twisters than it was in Twister.
Yeah, no, that's true. And I also there's this other dimension too that's is shown, which is that like she knows her stuff, which I think is really cool. Like she has studied a lot of this too, and knows a lot and has gone deep into this subject area. So like that paired with her instincts makes her this like incredibly intuitive, like double whammy. She's got both. So I love some of the scenes where like her and Tyler are sparring about something, and like she clearly knows her stuff and can like circle back to him about like the wind speeds and the drift, or I don't know, any sciencey stuff, okay, about the winds and the clouds and the formations and stuff. Like she like has the instinct, and it's also paired with the domain knowledge too, and that combination together is what makes her differentiate. I think that was really cool.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and the other thing that I appreciate that this film does, and it's the same thing that Twister does as well, is that these tornado chasers, they're not all just adrenaline junkies, but there are scientists, and it takes a lot of like sciencey stuff and things that I will never understand to do things like this. And I think that both films manage to like strike a balance between those things, and both films also focus on like the real damage that tornadoes can cause. And I think that that's an important aspect in humanizing this group of people who maybe we might be inclined to just be like, oh, they're just like adrenaline junkie weirdos, like why are they doing that? But we can see that it's attached to science and data and all of that, with the ultimate goal of actually helping people and communities. And so I like that both movies focus on that element too, and humanizing this people group.
No, that's so good. That's so good. And I love that little moment where like Kate also construes them as well, and some other
Mm-hmm.
choices
Yeah.
telling that she has a realization with us as the viewers too. Like, yeah, they're big and silly and goofy and larger than life, but part of what they're able to use their platform on, and their influence is to raise money and to raise awareness to then help people. Like that is their ultimate goal. And I think that like earnestness, that wholesomeness part of this movie is like really sweet and very resonant of the 90s too. Like even Javi and his whole crew, they're also just trying to do good. They just do it in different ways. Same thing with Tyler. They're just trying to help people. And so like everyone's intentions are all quite good. I would say the only real villain is someone we don't even meet, which is Riggs and his whole like real estate empire that he's building. But like we didn't even see that character. You know, we just see these really good natured people trying to do their best. Sometimes getting a little bit misled in it, but ultimately their intentions are also good. So that feels really sweet and comforting and what we need here in 2024. You know, like people are all inherently good. Let's try and not be used by the big corporate corrupt powers that be in ways that we didn't expect, but we're all trying to do the right thing.
Honestly, though, like stick it to the man, you know? Mm-hmm. Those evil corporations just out here doing shady stuff. But instead, we can support the good-natured YouTubers who are just out here doing God's work.
Okay. Any last big things we want to mention before we wrap up?
I just again want to say Tyler's crew was awesome. I wanted to spend so much time with Lily and her cool drone, and like she was awesome and seemed like she could do so much. And then Dexter is so smart and all of his sciencey and mathy business. And I'm like, yes, let's go. Like they were just so much fun. I wanted to know more about those two characters specifically, but I got excited anytime they were on screen because they just brought something so fun and fresh to this, and also showing, you know, the updated technology that we have at our fingertips and how that can aid in something like finding out where a tornado is going. That was also really cool to think about.
Yeah. What I love about them too is that like Kate has this Vantage Master degree. Tyler apparently does too. But there's that whole scene and conversation that Kate has with them where I think it's Lily that's like, nah, we just like, we spent the time to learn a lot of this, you know, and like we taught ourselves. And we obviously learned a lot from being in this crew, being with Tyler and his knowledge, but like we studied up at this, and that's how we know. We didn't need to go to some fancy mad expensive degree program. So I just love how like self-made they are and self-taught and like taking the initiative to just like dive into this area and like, yeah, they can hold their own. They know so much too and contribute significantly to Tyler's whole crew and his team. And they didn't need the whole degree to do it. They taught themselves. I just thought like that little detail in that conversation was really nicely woven in.
Yeah. And it's just, it's nice to see like just these ordinary people, you know, figuring out ways that they can contribute, which is, like you were saying, so wholesome, so hopeful. We love to see it.
So good. All right. Well, this was our review and discussion of Twisters. You can find it available out in theater. Thank you for listening to this week's episode of Movies and Us. Our name sums it up. We're all about movies and the powerful ways we can connect with each other and the world around us. This podcast is about all of us and our shared stories, so everyone is welcome here, and we're so glad you spent time with us today. You can subscribe to this podcast on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you tune to your favorite shows. Drop us a rating and review letting us know your thoughts about Twisters. You can connect with us on Instagram, Threads, and TikTok at moviesandUsPod, or email us at moviesandUspod@gmail.com. We will be back next week to discuss the film Deadpool and Wolverine. We hope you have an amazing week, and we'll talk again very soon.